So why a news lab, or what is a news lab? And really the way to think about this, I think, is really back to our core mission as a company, which is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. In my opinion, that's essentially the same job that journalists have been doing for years, way, way, way before Google ever existed. So as new technology comes onto the forefront, as new techniques come up, how do you parse that out, especially in a smaller newsroom or maybe a less funded newsroom? You know, not everybody can be the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Guardian. Well, you know, I think that at the core of what we talk about is really that technologists and journalists need to be working together to really figure out what the future of journalism is. I don't know that anybody has a particular answer as to what that is yet, but I'm excited about that. I've been working in this industry for a very, very long time, and I've seen an enormous amount of things change in that period of time. And I usually come across two different kinds of journalists. I come across one type of journalist that's like, I'm afraid of technology, I'm not good with computers, I don't really know where to start. I have another type of journalist that I interact with that is excited about this. Where do I find out more information? How do I learn more? How do I get started? And I think it's a subtle difference between the two of those. But what I hope to do is really encourage and excite you about what other tools are available to make your life easier, right? To save you time and to get you started and moving with your projects sooner. Our team is broken up into 4 different topics this year. We're focusing on trust and verification. You may have heard that there's some issues going on in the news industry right now around trust and verification of content. We'll be talking a little bit about that around trust and verification and how you can, as a journalist, make sure that you don't fall prey to some of those false tweets or things that are shared on social media. We also focus quite a bit, obviously, on data journalism. Google is a data-driven company. There's a lot of data. Google Search is actually one of the largest data sets available to humankind right now. Right? So how do you take advantage of that? How do you use that to figure out what people are searching for, what information they want from you as a newsroom or as a journalist, and how to position that information in such a way so that it's easy for them to find that on, say, Google Search, for example. We'll talk about that as well. Immersive storytelling, which is really a catch-all. This is what I call everything from 360 video to 360 photos to VR, things like drone journalism, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. And then lastly, inclusive storytelling. How do you uncover those voices that are lesser heard? Here in the Midwest, you know, I think that one of the things that we have seen over the last recent political cycle is that there's this giant swath of the middle of America that is not particularly well represented. And as newsrooms shrink, as budgets shrink, what happens to that local flavor, right? What happens to those local papers? How do you become more solvent? But then also, how do you make sure that your readers' and viewers' voices are being heard at a national level? We have trainers across the world right now, and this is not a particularly representative map of everywhere that we have folks, but we have about a dozen or so people stationed in various different countries doing trainings just like this, working with newsrooms to see what that future of journalism might be. I focus primarily on training and development, so doing trainings and conferences and conventions like this, but also going into newsrooms and doing one-on-one trainings with news organizations. We've done, as Brian was said, I've done personally about 100,000 journalists, trained about 100,000 journalists in person. That doesn't count our online trainings as well. We are constantly finding ways to help scale that work. We work with organizations like Pointer and SPJ and others to train trainers as a Train the Trainer program. So these folks here, this is our recent cohort of trainers. They are stationed all across the country. So if you are in a newsroom and you want a training for your news organization in person, you can request a training for free from one of our training networks. And you can find out more information about that by going to our site. You look under the programs tab and you follow a little link. It tells you a little bit more information about that, and you can sign up for that, and we can get somebody out to you. We also obviously can't be everywhere all of the time, so we've created a set of training materials on our website at g.co/newslab, and that covers a wide range of different tools. We have about 45 different lessons on there. I'm planning to add about another 20 to 21 of those later on this year, and we're expanding those into about 19 different languages. So if English is not your first language, there are options available for you. One thing I just want to mention before I move on to search specifically is we have just recently launched, no pun intended, a 4-part series of drone journalism boot camps. So if you're interested in getting certified to fly a drone commercially, part of the step that you need to do with that is get your 107 certification from the FAA. So we've worked with Pointer and a handful of other organizations to create boot camps so that you can figure out what steps you need to do or what information you need to absorb in order to be prepared to take that 107 certification. This is, I think, one of the futures of what journalism might look like. Another way of looking at this might be just it's another angle of attack or another angle of approach to tell that story. So is it a flood? Is it a fire? Is it a traffic jam of some sort? Is it a sporting event? You know, how do you get the better view or angle of that to tell the story in a unique and interesting way? And then if you combine that with things like 360 video, then you have some really interesting options available to you. We also have a university network that I would be remiss if I didn't mention as well. Mizzou is actually part of that. And we have about 60 other universities around the world that have joined on to help collaborate to figure out how to best position training to the future of journalists as well. We're also highlighting examples of great work that those classrooms and those students and those professors are doing. So if you are friends with or connected to a university, let us know. We'd be interested in adding you to that roster. We have about 150 other universities that are waiting to join right now. So as soon as I'm done with this and get my computer fixed, I'll be adding more of those to the list also.